No family ever stayed in this house for long because sooner or later they all disappeared. The film begins by introducing a family who have just moved into their new home. The house is enormous and still filled with moving boxes since they have not completely finished unpacking. The family consists of Kira, Brian, their teenage daughter Ellie, and her younger brother Steven. Unlike Steven, who is excited about living in a much bigger house, Ellie is far from happy about the move. In her eyes, the new house is too far away from her friends, forcing her to leave behind the life she has always known. As she starts exploring the house, Ellie notices several strange things left behind by the previous owner. Besides being filled with old paintings, nearly every door in the house bears mysterious symbols with triangular markings beneath them. When Ellie asks why none of these things have been removed, Kira explains that they have only just moved in and have not had time to sort everything out yet, although most of the items will probably be thrown away eventually. Ellie's uneasiness grows even stronger when she decides to check out the basement. The space is dark, spacious, and carries an unsettling atmosphere that makes anyone reluctant to stay there for long. While Ellie is inside, the basement door suddenly slams shut on its own.
Okay, just wait, calm down. Come on, not funny.
What's wrong with luck?
At first, she assumes her family is playing a prank on her, but her panic quickly escalates when Brian is unable to open the door from the outside. Terrified, Ellie begins to feel as though something is watching her from the darkness. Fortunately, Brian eventually finds a key hanging on the wall and manages to unlock the door, allowing her to get out. The incident leaves Ellie convinced that something is wrong with their new home. Back in her room, she chooses to be alone. Not long afterward, Kira comes to check on her daughter and make sure she's okay. As a teenager going through a rebellious phase, Ellie is often sensitive and quick to become irritated. Kira tries to talk with her and even tells her about a work project she is currently involved in, but Ellie shows no interest at all. She even openly admits that she dislikes her mother's job. Before leaving, Kira asks Ellie to watch over Steven that evening because she and Brian will be working late. Although reluctant, Ellie eventually agrees.
You okay? Can I come in? Listen, I need you to watch Steven tonight. So you're leaving us here. I hate your job, Mom. This one's important, okay? Fine.
Before her parents leave, she once again questions why they had to move into this house. Kira explains that everything is being done for the family's future, but the answer does little to satisfy her. Later that night, Kira and Brian leave for work while Ellie and Steven stay home alone. Missing her friends, Ellie spends some time talking to one of them on the phone. At the same moment, without her noticing, the door directly behind her slowly opens by itself. A short while later, Steven suddenly appears wearing a skull mask and successfully startles his sister. After being scolded, Steven shows Ellie where he found the mask. It turns out he discovered it inside a cabinet located in the playroom. The inside of the cabinet is dark, dusty, and covered in cobwebs. Their attention is then drawn to an old gramophone that surprisingly still works perfectly. When Ellie plays it, they hear the recorded voice of a man reciting a strange mathematical formula before slowly beginning to count numbers. Oddly enough, every time the counting can be heard, the electricity throughout the house starts behaving strangely.
1 n dy by dx epsilon partial 1 2 3 4 6.
That's enough.
Feeling that something is wrong, Ellie quickly stops the recording before the counting reaches its end. Written on the record itself is a name along with the same mathematical formula that the mysterious voice had just recited. Although slightly disturbed by it, Ellie chooses to ignore the discovery and spends the rest of the evening watching television alone in the living room. Unbeknownst to her, a cold draft begins to flow from beneath the basement door. Not long afterward, the lights start flickering, electrical devices begin shutting off by themselves, and eventually even the television she is watching suddenly goes dark. Panicked, Ellie immediately calls Kira and tells her that all the power in the house has suddenly gone out. Assuming it is nothing more than an electrical issue, Kira asks her daughter to check the circuit breaker located in the basement. Ellie immediately refuses, still shaken by the experience of being trapped down there earlier. However, Kira continues reassuring her and promises to stay on the phone the entire time. Thinking about Steven, who might wake up frightened in the dark, Ellie finally gathers enough courage to enter the basement once again. Armed with nothing but a candle for light, she slowly descends the stairs into the pitch-black basement. To help calm her down, Kira suggests that she count each step as she goes. There are only 10 steps leading down to the basement.
Listen, there's 10 steps to the bottom. I want you to count each step. Can you do that? Yeah. 1, 2, 3, 4. Good. Next step.
Okay, it's fine. Keep breathing.
At first, everything seems normal as Ellie carefully counts her way down, but the moment she reaches the 10th step, something strange happens.
5, 6. Concentrate. 7. Don't quit now. You're doing great, Ellie. 8, 9.
Her body suddenly collapses as if she has lost consciousness. Yet through the phone call, Kira can still hear her daughter's voice continuing to count numbers without stopping, even though the staircase only has 10 steps.
You're at the bottom, okay? Can you see the pillar in front of you?
11 12 13 14 15.
What makes the situation even more disturbing is that Ellie no longer responds whenever Kira calls her name. Sensing that something is terribly wrong, Kira and Brian immediately leave work and rush home. Upon arriving, they head straight for the basement, but Ellie is nowhere to be found. There are no signs of a struggle and no clues indicating where she might have gone. It is as if she has simply vanished into thin air. The police are quickly contacted and a large search operation begins throughout the surrounding area, but nothing turns up.
Ellie! Ellie!
Brian tries to convince Kira that Ellie probably ran away because she was unhappy about moving into the new house, especially since she had run away from home before. However, Kira refuses to believe that explanation. She cannot shake the feeling that Ellie's disappearance is somehow connected to whatever happened in the basement that night. Days pass without any sign of Ellie. Search teams continue looking for clues while Kira becomes consumed by guilt, blaming herself for telling Ellie to go down to the basement. Although Brian constantly tries to comfort her and insists that Ellie is probably staying with one of her friends, Kira cannot accept that possibility. Her instincts tell her that her daughter disappeared the moment she entered the basement. Unwilling to sit around and wait, Kira begins conducting her own investigation. She puts up missing person posters all over town, visits the police station almost every day, and contacts anyone who might have interacted with Ellie. Despite all her efforts, nothing leads to any answers. The police question Ellie's friends, examine her social media activity, and review security footage from around the neighborhood, but they fail to uncover any useful clues. Even after learning that Ellie had been the target of online bullying, Kira remains convinced that it has nothing to do with her disappearance.
We've checked her social media history and quite nasty bullying. CCTV, but no leads, unfortunately.
She didn't run away. Something happened in the cellar.
Back at home, Kira notices a strange phrase written above the front door, "Solve et coagula." After researching its meaning, she learns that it roughly translates to the idea that something must first be broken down before it can be rebuilt. At the same time, she tries to retrace the events of the night Ellie vanished. That is why she asks Stephen whether anything unusual happened before Ellie disappeared. Stephen tells her about the old gramophone they found and briefly played together. At the time, however, Kira does not consider the information particularly important. Instead, she decides to investigate the basement again because her instincts keep telling her that the answer to everything lies there. Carrying an ultraviolet flashlight, Kira carefully examines the basement once more. She is shocked to discover that each step leading down to the basement is numbered from 1 to 10, while a strange mathematical formula has been carved into the floor below. Even more disturbing, the basement walls are covered with frightening drawings that only become visible under ultraviolet light. Fortunately, Brian arrives home just in time and manages to open it. Although Kira tells him everything she experienced, Brian finds it difficult to believe her. To him, these incidents are probably the result of the emotional stress caused by Ellie's disappearance, but Kira refuses to let the matter go. She asks Brian to go down into the basement and look for the phone she dropped, hoping he will finally see that something is seriously wrong with the place.
What happened, Kay?
The lights went out and I got stuck in the cellar.
What are you trying to tell me?
Take a look. I dropped my phone. It fell down the steps. There was something in there.
Something.
Yeah, I heard something.
While searching, Brian never finds the missing phone. Instead, he discovers a strange clump of hair that should not be there. For a brief moment, he even thinks he sees something moving within the darkness. Nevertheless, Brian chooses to ignore it and continues convincing himself that all of these events are nothing more than coincidences. The following day, Kira visits a university and meets a mathematics professor named Remy. She shows him the formula she discovered in the basement and hopes he can explain what is really happening inside their house. After examining the formula, Remy immediately realizes that it is highly unusual. According to him, the equation is far more complex than ordinary mathematical formulas and likely carries a meaning far beyond simple calculations. When Kira mentions the name John Featherston, Remy instantly recognizes it because the office he now occupies once belonged to John before his mysterious disappearance years ago. Although fascinated by Kira's discovery, Remy explains that he needs time to study the formula more thoroughly before he can provide any definitive answers.
Where did you get this?
I bought John Featherston's family home. Who was he? Featherston.
You're standing in his old office. Delta, point vector, sum, epsilon. I'll be honest, it's incredibly complex and like nothing I've ever seen before.
After returning home, Kira tries to go about her day as normally as possible. Not long afterward, Remy contacts her again and reveals that he had repeatedly tried calling her phone number. Kira explains that her old phone mysteriously disappeared in the basement, forcing her to buy a new device and reactivate the same number. However, what unsettles Remy is the fact that before Kira resumed using the number, someone had apparently answered one of his calls. Strangely, there was no conversation on the other end. The only thing he heard was someone endlessly counting numbers. Remy then shares the results of his research. After consulting with several colleagues in France, he discovers that the same formula once appeared in a similar case involving an old house in Belgium. Even more disturbing, every resident of that house vanished without a trace. Their investigation reveals that the formula dates back to the 15th century and was supposedly created by an alchemist. Although its true purpose remains unclear, the formula appears to be connected to theories involving travel between dimensions. Hearing this, Kira becomes even more convinced that Ellie's disappearance was not an ordinary event. She then shows Brian the symbols found throughout the house and explains that they spell out the name Leviathan. However, she still has no idea what the triangles beneath each symbol represent. Just as before, Brian believes she is stretching things too far by linking mythology to their daughter's disappearance. Hoping to convince him, Kira takes Brian back to the basement and shows him the numbers carved into each step, as well as the mathematical formula etched into the floor. Even then, Brian remains skeptical. While they argue, another strange event unfolds in the playroom. the cabinet door suddenly swings open by itself. Curious, Stephen slowly approaches and notices that the inside of the cabinet now appears far darker and much deeper than before. At the same time, an irritated Brian attempts to destroy the mathematical formula in the basement by striking it. Instead of breaking apart, the floor emits a strange metallic humming sound as if something beneath it is resonating. At that exact moment, the old gramophone in another room suddenly begins playing on its own. John Featherston's recorded voice can once again be heard reciting the same mathematical formula before continuing with a sequence of numbers. As the counting echoes throughout the house, Stephen, who is standing in front of the cabinet, sees a figure emerging from the darkness within. He immediately recognizes the person as Ellie.
1, 2.
Terrified, Stephen screams for his parents. Kira and Brian rush to his side, but by the time they arrive, the figure has vanished without a trace. Curiously, every strange phenomenon comes to an abrupt stop the moment the counting on the recording reaches the number 10.
10, 10, 10.
There's something in there. It looks like Ellie.
Although they do not find Ellie, Brian discovers Ellie's phone near the cabinet. That discovery finally convinces him that something is genuinely wrong with the house. For the first time, he can no longer dismiss everything as a coincidence. Searching for more answers, Kira decides to visit the only surviving member of the Featherston family, Rose Featherston, John Featherston's daughter, who now lives in a nursing home.
Hello, Rose. I came here to ask you about your father. My family moved into your house, and now my daughter is missing.
The moment Rose learns that Kira is living in her former house and has lost a child, her demeanor changes noticeably. When Kira asks her to explain what really happened, the elderly woman writes down only a single name, Leviathan. Rose goes on to explain that her father was once a highly respected scientist. However, everything changed when one of his family members became seriously ill. Desperate for answers, John began searching beyond the limits of science and gradually became obsessed with something he called Leviathan. According to Rose, the problem is not limited to the basement. The entire house is affected.
Leviathan. Yes. Where is my daughter? She's still in the cellar.
It's not just the set, it's the whole house.
On her way home, Kira tries calling Remy to discuss her latest discovery. Once again, however, the only thing she hears on the phone is the sound of someone endlessly counting numbers. Meanwhile, Brian, who is finally beginning to believe his wife's suspicions, continues studying the symbols scattered throughout the house. After arranging the triangles found beneath each symbol, he realizes that together they form a pentagram. When Kira arrives home, Brian shows her what he has discovered. The symbol turns out to be the sigil of Baphomet, an emblem often associated with the worship of ancient entities. What makes the discovery even more unsettling is that the hand gesture used by Baphomet closely resembles the pose seen in John Featherston's portrait hanging inside the house. Even the phrase Solve et Coagula, carved above the entrance, appears to be connected to Baphomet as well.
An ancient evil.
It's some sort of demon. Baphomet. These are the Hebrew glyphs over the 5 points.
Coagula. This whole house is being designed around it.
Look at the fingers, just like in the painting.
Meanwhile, Stephen is playing with his drone inside the house when it suddenly loses control and flies on its own toward the basement. Unaware of the danger waiting for him, Stephen slowly follows it downstairs. At the same time, Kira decides to play John Featherston's record once again in hopes of finding more clues. Just like before, the recording begins with John's voice reciting a strange mathematical formula before slowly counting numbers. Without anyone realizing it, the counting once again begins to affect Stephen, who is now in the basement. Just as it happened to Ellie, Stephen gradually loses awareness and starts walking down the basement stairs while following the numbers coming from the recording. When he reaches the bottom, Stephen briefly regains his senses and manages to recover his drone. However, standing right beside him is Baphomet. Seconds later, the entire house loses power once again, followed by Stephen's terrified scream, causing Kira and Brian to rush toward the basement. Unfortunately, by the time they arrive, Stephen has vanished, leaving only his drone lying on the floor. Kira immediately fears that Stephen may have suffered the same fate as Ellie. In the middle of the panic, a ball suddenly appears. Kira instantly recognizes it as the same ball she accidentally kicked into the basement earlier. Moments later, they hear someone counting numbers. Following the sound, they discover Stephen walking inside the cabinet, which now appears far darker and much larger than before. After bringing him back out, they realize that his body is burning hot. When they remove his shirt, they find a pentagram-shaped symbol carved into his chest. In a trance-like state, Stephen claims that he has just ridden a beast with 7 heads and 10 horns before continuing to count numbers again.
I'm thirsty.
I'll get him some water.
49, 48, 47.
Growing more alarmed, Kira searches for Brian, who has suddenly disappeared. She eventually finds him in a similar condition. Brian has also started counting numbers unconsciously, as though he's fallen under the same influence that previously affected Stephen and Ellie. Before long, Brian's counting turns into a countdown. When it reaches the final number, something in the basement begins moving closer.
41, 43, 2, 1.
Kira suddenly comes face to face with Baphomet. With nowhere else to run, she rushes into the basement. However, she discovers that the staircase, which normally consists of only 10 steps, has transformed into a seemingly endless passageway. Realizing that Baphomet is following behind her, Kira has no choice but to keep descending until she reaches a place unlike anything she has ever seen before. There she finds a dark and vast world filled with thousands, perhaps millions of people from different ages and backgrounds. All of them stand in enormous lines while endlessly counting numbers in countless different languages. In that place, Kira finally begins to understand what has been happening all along. The mathematical formula carved into the basement floor, the strange symbols scattered throughout the house, the numbers engraved on the staircase, and John Featherston's recording are all connected. It appears that John Featherston somehow discovered a way to open a path to another world. Rather than using traditional rituals commonly found in horror stories, he relied on a combination of mathematical formulas and numerical sequences preserved within his recording. Every time the record is played, anyone who hears it gradually falls under its influence and begins repeating the numbers without realizing it. The basement is the most important part of the process. It is not simply a basement, but a doorway connecting the human world to another dimension. Once someone influenced by the recording continues following the numbers while entering the basement, the boundary between the two worlds slowly begins to open. Kira finally understands what happened to Ellie. On the night of the blackout, Ellie heard John's recording and descended into the basement while counting the steps exactly as her mother had instructed. However, after reaching the 10th and final step, the counting continued, even though there were no more stairs left to descend. Without realizing it, Ellie had crossed through the doorway and entered the world hidden beyond the basement. The same thing gradually began happening to Stephen and Brian. The more often the family listened to the recording and the more frequently they interacted with the basement, the stronger the influence of the other world became. Eventually, they no longer realized when they had begun crossing from the human world into another reality. Among the countless people endlessly counting numbers, Kira eventually notices a familiar tattoo. It belongs to Ellie. Fighting her way through the crowd, she finally finds her daughter, who appears dazed and continues repeating numbers just like everyone else. Kira manages to snap Ellie out of her trance and leads her back toward the endless staircase connecting that dimension to their house. During their journey back, Kira can still hear Baphomet's footsteps echoing in the distance. Strangely, the creature makes no attempt to stop them. Although something feels wrong, Kira continues onward until they finally return to the house. Gradually, Ellie begins recovering. Stephen and Brian also regain their senses after falling under the influence of the entity. For a brief moment, Kira believes that the nightmare is finally over. Convinced that the house is the source of all their problems, the family decides to leave immediately. However, when Kira opens the front door, all she sees is an endless staircase stretching into darkness. At that moment, she finally realizes the horrifying truth. They never truly returned to their own world. All this time, they believed that only Ellie had been pulled into another dimension. In reality, every time the recording was played and every time they entered the basement, they too were slowly being drawn into the same place. Kira finally understands why Baphomet never tried to stop her. It was not because they had escaped, but because they were already trapped inside the other world. The house they had been living in was no longer part of the human world at all. It had become part of the other realm connected through the basement. Moments later, Ellie, Stephen, and Brian once again begin counting numbers unconsciously as they slowly walk toward the basement. Kira soon finds herself doing the same, following them while quietly counting the numbers. And with that, the story comes to an end.